Hello, welcome to episode number 20 of the Apostate Alliance. The Apostate Alliance is where you can be free to not believe, and we're joined by an ex-Christian non-believer today, Jefferson Spatchcock, a non-diplome for him. And everybody's been asking, what's a spatchcock? Well, I'm going to tell you, a spatchcock is a chicken or game bird split open and grilled. Now, we're not going to split Jeff open today, but we are going to grill him. It's apostasy and his journey out of religion. Faye is running late today. She may not show up at all. She was traveling across London, which I guess is quite busy today. This is episode 20. I don't know whether 20 is a thing, but I think it's momentous, a nice round number like that. But as you may remember, we had skipped over episode 13 because we had technical difficulties. Now we have all the parts of that show that we need to put together, and we're going to be doing that over the next week. So be looking for, it won't be at the normal time. It'll just be put out as a video. Lost episode number 13 with ex-Muslim Haas. And be looking for that. Before we get started here, let me say hello to everybody in the chat. A lot of folks showed up early. Critical Cripple, Hi Harry is here. EMC 2103, someone that I just met newly. The Rage is in the house, of course, and he has been producing the first couple minutes of the show each week because I'm too stupid to run OBS and do the starting soon screen and all that stuff. And my thanks to him for doing that. Rational Canadian Atheist is here. He's going to be on the show in the beginning of October. My brother from another mother, Maynard Saves, is here. My campaign manager, he's been posting in the chats as of late that Petersen 2020. So write me in instead of Biden or Trump. Godless Granny is here. She has an awesome channel. Get over there and sub to her channel and check out her content. And who else is here that I missed? Paul Camish is here. Sergeant Slim Jim, awesome, in the house. Sergeant Slim Jim. All right. So as you know, before we start the interview, we always talk about a few stories that I find on Twitter from the world of Muslim apostasy. And there's one thing I want to talk about right off the bat that has, as they say on Family Guy, it kind of really grinds my gears. As a matter of fact, I'm not ashamed to admit it. It had me getting a little emotional earlier this morning when I found this on Twitter. I'm going to probably say his last name horribly, but Armin Navabi of the Atheist Republic, he had gotten into a bit of a Twitter war with some Hindus and posted a picture. To me, it's kind of a flattering of I don't even remember the name. It's a goddess, a Hindu goddess, the one with the 6 arms. If you know who that is, Jeff, help me out here.
Shiva?
I believe so, yeah. But it wasn't even that bad of a picture. It was a picture of her, and she was winking, and, she was scantily clad and all that. And he might have had a comment to say about that. Well, so one of these people that was mad at him, he must have posted on social media at one point when his mom passed away. It was a picture of him and other members of his family, saying their goodbyes to their mother shortly after she had died. And it shows her laying in her deathbed. And this Hindu person posted it on Twitter with the caption, "Getting ready for a gangbang."
Nice.
Now, and as we always do, I will link to these tweets in the video description if you want to go check it out. I just found that absolutely abhorrent. Now I realize
pretty close. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say that's pretty awful.
Yeah, and the thing is, okay, I realize when a person believes in a religion, that they believe that their deities are real, okay, but I don't care. My opinion is, I don't care what your dispute is with another person. You don't bring their family into it, okay? And you especially don't bring your family into it in such a disgusting way. And everybody that is co-signing this, that what happened, they're all saying, well, he insulted our goddess, so his mother is fair game. I'm sorry, insulting someone's beliefs, insulting a god, which in my mind, in the mind of atheists, is not real anyway. Okay, and I understand the people that think it's real. That does not equate to putting on social media and implying that a man is going to fuck his dead mother. Okay, pardon my guttural language, but that's exactly what this person did. And the fact of the matter is I'm sure it's a very small percentage of Hindus that are co-signing this bullshit and saying there's nothing wrong with it, because just as in any religion, there's extremists. I would imagine that the majority of Hindus, much like the majority in all religions, are just people living their lives and, would never co-sign that kind of disgusting thing. But I mean, that's all I'm going to say about that story. We'll link it in the description, and you can go check the thread out yourself and see it if you'd like to. I mean, do you have any comment on that at all, Jeff? Or
only to say, I mean, not excusing the behavior in any way, but yeah, I think that kind of thing is to be expected. If you've got like an image of like a, if a relative passes away and that, a photo of that is now public information, you can, if you've kind of picked a fight with somebody, you're in the midst of that kind of an argument, somebody on the other side who's a little bit more trolly than the others is probably going to pick up on that and then throw that off. The weird thing I find about that kind of stuff is that, like, I mean, that seems like it's not a joke. It's this weird threat against the dead mother. Like, that's just sort of a desperate and kind of, silly thing to do. It's
well, it's funny you bring up the word threat, because they're, against this man Armin, there have been actual threats of violence. And, one person I engaged on there, implied to me that, oh, you think you're online, that I can't figure out where you're at and all that, and I said, well, hey, DM me, man. I'll give you my address and send you a plane ticket. Come on over, buddy. But another thing I wanted to share, and my apologies, I have to, the only way I can read stuff on my phone here is I got to look over the top of the glasses because I'm such a blind son of a bitch, and I refuse to wear bifocals. So a Northern Cape transgender woman who sought help for domestic violence from the South African police service, because she said she had been assaulted. They basically, when they found out that she was transgender, they decided they weren't going to help her look into it at all. And now they're taking a lot of heat over that. I mean, I don't understand this mentality that, first of all, why is it so inconceivable that a human being could be born the wrong gender or be born, one sex, but chemically and personally inside them, they are the other sex. Okay. I mean, people are born with different things all the time. I mean, and I don't mean this in a pejorative way. People are born with birth defects all the time. And if you were born the wrong sex, or maybe you were born as, you have both sets of genitalia, well, then that's a birth defect. And we don't stigmatize other people that are born with things wrong with them. Okay. I mean, I was born without a thumb on my hand. I mean, not equatable to being transgender, but transgender women are women. Transgender men are men. And how does it hurt anybody? I liken it kind of like to the gay marriage thing. How does it hurt you to respect someone's choice of what gender they want to be known as, what pronouns they want to be known as? How can you decide, like these police officers did, that because this woman is transgender, that she doesn't deserve for you to look into her crime, to help her as you would any other citizen? So again, we'll put this in the video description. You can go check the story out yourself. It's a tweet, and then it links to a story on the web about this. And my thanks to Mamba Online. I know I said that wrong, for that tweet. I think that might be it. Let me look real quick. There might have been one other thing I wanted to bring up. But if you have any comments on that story I just spoke about, Jeff, please say anything you'd like to say about it.
Yeah, I'm always kind of surprised by. Well, I guess I'm not really surprised that people have an issue with it, but I think it's odd that I haven't really discussed like trans issues either on my channel. I don't really get an opportunity to really talk about it that much with anyone really. But I think it's odd that of all the different things that we deal with, trans people, it seems like these cops, when they find out that this person's trans, it's not just that this person is an other. Like everything and anything about them is just the trans part. They get reduced to that issue, and then it's all about and it's not even really about their identity or whether or not, like you're talking about, maybe, this is something that they're born with, rather than even considering that. I think people get hooked up into these ideas of these stereotypes about, well, if they're trans, they must be sexual degenerates, right? There's sexual stuff going on there that's naughty and perverse and all this stuff, and that they can't see past that. That's their reaction, and so it's sad that that's the limit of their imagination. But that's what prejudice does. It limits thinking, it limits the imagination, and ultimately I think those are things that kind of hamper sympathy. And so if you can't pay attention to this person in a time of distress, once this identity thing has been revealed, all of these prejudices come out, and okay, we're not going to help this person because they somehow deserve it. That's not how I don't know how things work in South Africa, but even here, you're a citizen based on the law. You're not a citizen based on these, identities and issues. So,
yeah. I mean, real quick, Knock. Yeah, I was just going to say spot on as far as, and I didn't even think of that they are just looking at them through the transgender lens and not, appreciating them for all the other qualities of a human being they have.
Right.
You know, I mean, it just totally disregarding any other part of their humanity just because they're looking through those blinders of, oh, this is a trans person, you know, and that makes me uncomfortable. Oh, ooh. So go ahead, Knock.
Well, yeah, I didn't have quite as much to do. My daughter's fine, so I'm like, screw it. I'm gonna pop in and be a part of this. But I consider trans people to be the most discriminated people in the entire world. And like when you look at what's happening on the streets here in America, and you can see the sides galvanizing into their two separate sides, and you can see that the police are willing to ignore the protesters to a certain degree, right? But when it comes to trans people, it's a whole nother level. As Jay was pointing it out, it's the only thing people see about them. And if you look across this country, what you're talking about happening in South Africa is actually trying to be made into policy here under the Trump administration, not allowing trans people to get the medical help they need. That was an executive order out of this administration, not allowing trans people into the military. So we're seeing a regression here in America, and trans people really seem to be the focus target of the LGBTQ plus community. And then you look on top of that at the stories not being reported in this country of Black trans women disappearing at insane rates, and nobody's talking about it. We have a real issue right here in America that people are all too willing to ignore because of what Jefferson was speaking to, that these trans people aren't even others. They're worse than an other to most people. And that's something that like I will always be advocating for here on this channel, no matter what. Equality is equality. Trans people are people, and they deserve that equality too. We've got to break these stigmas because we are regressing here.
Well, and the other thing is too, to me, it's important to point out that some of these, deep thinkers, and I mean completely the opposite of that are so against trans people, think it is, a new advent, that it's something that has come out of the 21st century. There's been transgender people around for centuries.
Well, even longer than that, John. Native American tribes. It was I'm not going to say all tribes, but in most tribes, it was an accepted practice in society. If you were a man and you dressed as a woman and you were a woman, then you became a woman and you did the women things. You weren't a hunter gatherer. You was taking care of the village. So, it wasn't always stigmatized, like I said, in Native American cultures and some other cultures across the world. But it does seem to be extremely stigmatized now. And as you pointed it out earlier, to think that people can't be born in the wrong skin and the wrong flesh and the wrong gender, you obviously just don't understand what's been happening throughout the history of the world, because this has always happened, right?
Yeah,
like this is natural. This is part of it. And people need to really realize that.
I think it's
absolutely.
It's interesting too, because I think in the ironic thing is that people talk against things like tribalism, but in the case of any of these sort of First Nations tribes or anything, if they had to deal with an issue like this with an individual, it's the tribalism that kind of forces them to deal with it, right? Like they can either take this person that's a member of the tribe, a member of an extended family, a friend of a friend, and do what? Ostracize that person. This person isn't doing anything wrong, or you include them, you accept them, and it depends on the culture of that particular tribe. But I think in a country like the United States, we tend to value things like individuality to the point where it starts to affect the way the view of our political ideology. It's easy from an individual's perspective to think, well, okay, there's this situation with a trans individual. Well, that trans person's doing something wrong. There's something wrong with that person, and maybe the state needs to deal with them. I don't have to, it's easy to sit back as the individualist in a country like America and say, well, that person needs to deal with their own crap. Okay. But that's not how a society works. Like at some point, you have to be willing to kind of pitch in, and you have to be willing to accept the fact that some amount of cooperation is involved. And in the case of these South African cops, literally the only thing that they had to do was suspend any prejudices they had and do their job and make sure this person, regardless of what their status is, has full representation as a citizen under the law and deserves that treatment, not to be ignored.
Yeah, I mean,
So
like you said, just had to ignore the prejudice and not do anything out of the ordinary. Just as you said, do their job. It's something, they probably dealt with situations like that hundreds.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, it's like they're not, by doing their job, they're not endorsing a lifestyle they disagree with or any of this other nonsense. It's just do your job and help this person in need. The rest of that stuff, that's going to take another generation or two to sort out. But if you've got a problem with it, you're a professional, you're in law enforcement. Swallow your pride. Check your ego. Try to take the blinders off and deal with this person as another person in society.
So another tweet here. My thanks to Mariam Namazi for that. She's a very well-known ex-Muslim that's on Twitter quite a bit and other social media. She shared a story, and again, we'll link this in the description, coming out of Poland. Bishops in Poland want to force LGBT people into conversion therapy camps. Give any religion power, even after it has been restrained, and it will renew its assault on gains made in rights and freedom. Now, Poland is not, it isn't like some, it's not Pakistan. Let's put it that way. Okay. And here they are arguing over whether they should force LGBT people into conversion therapy camps. I did one of those, little shake your head kind of things when I read that. I couldn't believe it was true. And there's a story that goes to Pink News out of the UK about this. So please check it out. In the description, I'll get these in there. As soon as the show's over. Either of you fellas have a comment on that?
Well, I'm not too familiar with the politics of the area with Poland. I think that there are some different religious things going on in Poland, but I'm not too familiar with it. But I am somewhat familiar with Russia. And Russia's push, especially Putin's push to demonize the LGBTQ plus community. And this sounds a lot like what Russia was trying to do, or Putin had put this forward himself. But I think that this is a sign that we see all across the world. And I think that a lot of it has to do with the National Prayer Breakfast right here in the States and them spreading their tentacles and trying to force this American evangelicism worldwide. We see it in Uganda. There was a push to actually try and execute gay peoples legally in Uganda. And so I'm not quite sure like what's going on in Poland, but I wouldn't be surprised that that's some political pressure maybe from Russia, because I do think Poland was one of those countries that used to at least deal with Russia a lot. So I'm not sure, but it sounds kind of something like Russia would do.
Well, let me ask Jeff, because now it says bishops. Do you know, Jeff, in your studies, what the predominant religion would be? Because I when I hear bishops, I think Catholicism, but there might be other religions that have bishops. Do you have any idea what the predominant religion in Poland is?
Yeah, it's my understanding is overwhelmingly Catholic. I've known a few people from Poland who are either here to study or came over to work. There's a pretty long-standing tradition of some very, very conservative Roman Catholic types in the population in Poland in general. And Poland, like a few other Eastern European countries, has been swinging towards a very far right-wing ideology. How far to the right remains to be seen. I don't know that Poland has pushed as far as Hungary, but that may be due to a lack of success and not a lack of trying. There are some really nasty groups in Poland and Hungary right now. And unlike Hungary, which I think might approach it a little bit more from a kind of nation state kind of thing, I don't think Hungary is quite as overwhelmingly Catholic as Poland is. Poland's got that background in Catholicism. I mean, one of the was that not Ratzenberger, but the Pope before him, John Paul. When he died, the memorial services in Poland were overwhelming. So yeah, it's a very Roman Catholic country, and they tend to be.
Yeah,
And again, this is just based on my own knowledge. I don't know what polls would show, but they tend to be very conservative.
Well, and then as you were answering my question there, I looked a little closer at the picture, and it's definitely Catholics. I mean, they've got the Catholic priest and bishop garb on and headgear and all that. My suggestion to them is maybe they should send their pedophile priests to deconversion camps and not worry about the LGBT community. But of course, as everybody knows, if a priest rapes a child, he just gets moved to another parish. One more quick one I want to mention, and my thanks to Horatia. You probably heard the name Horatio. Well, this person is Horatia on Twitter. A Saudi woman, Dr. Amal Al-Asmari, has disappeared from social media, and she posted a video, and she had been kicked out of a park for violating the dress code, which only applies to Saudi women, not women visiting Saudi Arabia. She disappeared from social media. People don't know where she is. Some presume that she is dead, simply for violating a dress code. And again, this is just one of them things that I just kind of shake my head at. I just don't understand. I don't know what happened to her, but she disappeared. So you can assume that whatever happened to her isn't good. And just because she violated some archaic dress code. But that's weird. I'll put that in the description. You can check that out. Go ahead, guys. If either of you had anything to say about that.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about that. So I'd be interested to kind of check that out.
All right. So, and as we always do, the first 5-10 minutes of the show, we bring you down with all the bad stories, and then we try and bring you back up with the interview. We're joined today by Jefferson Spatchcock, and we've invited Jeff's brother, Jay. I didn't think about doing it until the last second. I wish I'd set it up that way from the start, because there's no doubt that when you see these two gentlemen together in a hangout talking, there's no doubt in your mind that they are brothers. So I hope Jay shows up. If not, we will have an interview with Jay sometime in the future. But we usually talk to ex-Muslims, but we have talked to apostates of all religions. And how long have you been an atheist now, Jeff?
I just kind of crested into my early 40s. I think my deconversion happened right around the time I was 30. So
right around the time you're 30.
So it's been over 10 years. No.
Oh, okay. And then so you were born into Christianity then?
Yeah. My parents. I don't know how old I was when they started regularly attending a church, but probably around 2, I think. So yeah, most of my early memories involve, some of the churches that we grew up in.
And so, what type of church did your family attend?
When they started out, so I was an '80s kid growing up in the Midwest. So my folks were middle class, and they got involved in a church that some relatives had started going to that was in a smaller town, and my parents got involved in it, and that actually encouraged them to move into that smaller town. And it was a non-denominational, kind of charismatic church. It was started by a few people. There was nobody in the group that had any kind of like theology degree. No one had gone to seminary. There was no overarching denominational organization. In fact, they even arranged themselves so it was there was no pastor. It was 12. I think they called themselves disciples. I don't know if they actually said they were apostles.
Or deacon, maybe?
Yeah, kind of, but they didn't even have that. What their goal was, they wanted to arrange themselves as close as possible to their understanding of the early church as described in the book of Acts. That was their goal. And because of that, they kind of believed that, everybody that gets saved gets a gift. So praying in tongues was a big deal, and some of those services would get pretty wild. And so the group, as it expanded, it started attracting a wide range of people. The people that were disenfranchised or just dissatisfied with some of the more buttoned down conservative denominations out there. And so we had like a really unusual combination of like some relatively strict people, because even though they got into the group, I think they stayed because they were like, I'm going to shepherd these people into something a little bit more disciplined. But then in came the former Jesus freaks from the late 60s, early 70s. They came rolling in, and Jesus was like, sort of their substitute for, LSD. So those services would get pretty wild. But we were only in that church until I was probably about 7 or 8. And then it fell apart due to financial problems and some personality conflicts. So,
and then you moved on to another church?
Yeah, not right away. It was weird that church splintered. My dad was heavily involved in it. They started a school, a Christian school that my older sister attended. My brother and I weren't quite old enough to get into it. That was part of what led to a lot of their financial problems. They kicked it off once the school started to wind down. They got into the homeschool movement. So that's how my family got into that in a big way. So we started doing the homeschooling thing. Then the church itself at proper collapsed. And so they started meeting in different people's homes, which is really like the Book of Acts. I mean, that's first century Christian church stuff. So they carried on for a little while, just a few friends, people that stayed close over time. And then that eventually just kind of fizzled out too. We stayed in the same town, but we moved. We used to live out in the boonies. We moved kind of into the town itself. We were about 2 blocks away from this other church. My dad got tired of not having a regular church to attend. So he just, every Sunday morning, he'd walk down and start attending this place. And it was the exact opposite of the one that we had experienced. It was stuffy, extremely conservative. The congregation that would show up, you might get 40, 50, 60 people was the Easter, Most of them were older people, had been there for a very long time. They were incredibly conservative. It was a Nazarene denomination. So that was the second big influence for church in my life. And that was less than fun.
Well, and when we talked before, you kind of described, the church experience, your home life is fundamental-esque, as far as religion goes. So what was it like in your home as far as religion goes? Were your folks real strict? Did they make you pray before meals and before going to bed and all that? Like, were they shoving the Bible in your face all the time? Or
no, that'd probably be the esque part of it. Like, as far as we were concerned, my parents kind of had a pretty heavy emphasis. They wanted us to be able to think critically and to think for ourselves. So as far as a lot of like religious stuff went, they weren't too heavy-handed with like trying to like drill down on doctrine. They weren't sitting there, and not only that, but I don't think they knew. This is before the internet. So there's stuff that I know about the Bible and when I present it to my dad today, who's still a believer, he just blinks blankly at me. He doesn't know where I found that, doesn't know how I got that. And I'm like, yeah, it's in here, and here. Take a look at these scholars, take a look at what they've studied. He had no idea, So he had a more limited understanding of it based on, his introduction to any kind of Bible studies was through a church, which is probably the worst way you can do it. So yeah, growing up, they weren't really all that strict. I mean, we said our prayers before we went to bed. They weren't, we didn't, my mom wasn't like Carrie's mom or anything like that. We didn't get anything like that. But my dad was a little bit more conservative about stuff like that. So when it came to like sexual stuff, sex issues, they kind of gravitated towards that kind of stuff. Like we being gay was obviously bad. But then again, this was the 80s. So everybody was calling everybody the F word. There was an influence while that church, that early church when we were kids, would sort of affect us. They would go through these fads. So things like for instance, there were people that would not buy their kids certain toys if they had the word like demon in them, because those were of the devil. If it had been around the same time as like the emergence of the Harry Potter books, they would have banned them. If you're reading those, you're basically introducing your kids to black magic. They got rid of all their albums. not all of them. My dad rebelled a little bit, but they had this push that you shouldn't be listening to secular music, which is just, so my dad had some really good albums that he ended up getting rid of. And he made an exception for ones that he thought might have kind of a Christian deist bent. So he cheated a little bit. So, but yeah, they would go through those cycles of that kind of stuff. And you're not supposed to watch movies. We didn't have a TV for years. When we did finally get one, it was a tiny black and white TV. And then, it was the kind of stuff that, as a kid, we went without that kind of stuff. So they were they lived out in the country. They raised rabbits. We had a goat. I mean, it was it was sort of like the beginning of a kind of an apocalyptic family living in the early 80s.
Right. It's like, it sounds like kind of like you guys were prepping for the end times. And there was this sort of basic distrust of the government, kind of stuff like that. So, and then politically we were pretty conservative, especially as I got older. Once I got into my teen years, I was very conservative politically because I thought I knew what I was talking about. And the two churches that we were involved in, that just sort of, the first one was kind of this foundation of, you live out in the middle of nowhere, you live on your own, you make rabbit stew, you raise your goat to mow your lawn, all this kind of crazy, off the grid stuff. And then as we progressed into the other church, it was extremely strict to the point where that congregation, if you were a member, you would tithe, you would not watch television, should not watch TV other than the news, maybe. And if you watch the news, not around your kids. Don't go to movies. Don't rent movies. Don't own movies. Don't dance. Don't drink. Don't smoke. Don't gamble. Don't play cards, not even for fun. So yeah, and the previous group, the charismatics, we never really put any rules down like that. So they would kind of switch back and forth, and they would get more strict or less strict. There was a point where nobody was eating sugar. It almost sounds like Quakers or Mennonites or something like that. Yeah,
they just sort of followed a lot of trends, and some of the fads they would get into was stuff from the late 70s. And back then, being in the Midwest, we'd usually pick up on stuff about 3 to 5 years after the fact. I remember the first time I saw a pair of Airwalk sneakers, and mind you, this is in the mid 90s. Airwalks had already been popular in California in the late 80s. But it took that long for them to make it to a shopping mall in the Midwest. Now this stuff is more or less instantaneous. And that stuff affected even things like church populations and stuff. So like the satanic panic that happened in the 80s, that stuff was still going on into like the early, probably like even 91 here. Oh, wow. And it wasn't until things kind of, cable news was the first step that sped stuff up. And then after cable news, once the internet came out, then that.
Real quick, apropos of nothing we're talking about here, I just thought, because you said you seem like you're very learned on these topics, and somebody's in the chat, the synagogue, that he gave a little blowback on a claim that one of his fellow Christians was making in a chat a while back. And for Nakasuchi's benefit, I want to ask you if you know, because there was some conflicting information on the internet. What's the earliest book of the Bible? What was the first book written of the Bible? As far as, do you have any idea
of the entire Bible, or like specifically the Old Testament or New Testament?
Well, right. And what the synagogue said during that stream is he had put in the live chat that what the first, 4 or 5 books of the Bible are the Jewish,
the Torah.
It's the
Torah. Yep.
And he said that those were the first books written. Now somebody else is claiming that Job was the earliest written book of the Bible. Do you have any idea what the real answer is?
I heard some people arguing about that. My understanding is that Job as a folktale may predate some of the Torah. I know that, like, as far as documents go, I don't know. I think they have older versions, older copies of the Torah that, they predate any copies of Job that they have. But I think even in terms of writing, I think he might be right. I think the oldest ones would be, especially when scholars are talking about when they would have been written, when they were dated. Because there's a difference between the date of the oldest document that you have, the oldest copy, and the date that they're estimating it was written. From what I understand, most scholars think that.
Let me tell you what I'm hearing is that much like other stories in the Bible, it may have been the earliest one because it was one of those stories that Christianity appropriated from another religious tradition, or as you're saying about this Job story, that it was a folk tale?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the tradition that you get into, because I've heard Christian apologists go in a couple of different directions with it, and that gets kind of confusing. The easiest thing to do is to take a look, and I haven't actually done that in a while, because like I said, my Bible study shifted to the Gospels and Paul, so I'm trying to get through the New Testament. I'm going to go back. I had started with some, I was kind of doing a dual thing with the Quran and then the Old Testament, and the Old Testament, if you study it from the Hebrew Bible tradition, you get a very different scholarly outlook than you'd get if you're trying to get it from these Christian apologists that are trying to tell you, like, because in most theological perspectives, what they're going to try to tell you is that the Bible is this complete narrative from Genesis to Revelation, and it isn't. And if you want to be a scholar or even a dutiful student, you can't approach it that way. It's an anthology of lots of different books, and there's a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different genres included in there. And a lot of Christian apologists, even amateur ones on YouTube, will acknowledge that while simultaneously clinging to the idea that this must be a solid, consistent narrative from Genesis 1 to Revelation, the end of Revelation. It all works. That is a lot of, like, there's an enormous amount of special pleading coming from Christian apologists when it comes to that kind of stuff. In the Hebrew tradition, they don't care if it's clean. The fact that it raises issues and leads to arguments is not necessarily a bad thing. So I think scholars do argue about whether or not, about some of the dating of the documents. I think the most contentious claim is whether or not Job, as this sort of oral tradition as a folktale, predated the sort of early ideas that became the Torah. And that I don't know if they'll ever be able to solve that one.
Well, and to break this down a little bit, I'm going to be making a video on this because of Smokey Saint. Smokey Saint's just mistaken. Even what he pulled up in our last conversation, it was really brief. Like, I think he did it on purpose because he knows he's being disingenuous and lying. But like he pulled up quite clearly said it's the first poetic book written, and that's a completely different thing than being the first book written of the Bible. So, like, as I've done research, I can't remember the exact first book that was written, but even the Torah wasn't the first books written. They had scripture before the Torah, but it wasn't much, and it was still kind of being compiled. But the actual text, the book of Job. Now, there probably was oral traditions, and it probably was a story that was taken from another religion and that they incorporated into their own. But the actual text, the book of Job that's in the Bible that we know was written much, much later because it implies the Romans. So we know that it was well after the Torah when the book of Job was written because of the implications of the Romans. So, I've been doing the research. I'm going to actually prep a video on this one topic. And then this Wednesday, I'm going to have Dr. Josh here. And that will be one of the things that we're going to talk about while he's here.
Yeah, he'd be one of the better ones to do that. Because I know I've gone to Dr. Josh about issues involving Daniel, because that's one that he approaches. I haven't gotten into Isaiah yet. But then again, I'm trying to, like, put a pin in that. I get curious and then I get off I go down another rabbit hole. I'm trying to stick with the New Testament to get through it. But yeah, no, I don't think that there's much of a claim to that. And if they're trying to switch the category to say, well, Job is the first prophetic one, well, the Tanakh is divided into three parts, right? You have the Torah, the first 5 books. The Christians call it the Pentateuch, and then you have the Nevi'im and then the Ketuvim, right? And you got the prophets and then the writings. If you want to say that out of those 3 things, which one's oldest? Oh, okay, well, that's slightly different than what's the oldest book in the Bible. That's, well, which Bible?
Yeah, I mean, now, Godless Granny's in the live chat, and she's new to atheism and was a Christian for decades. She says Job was the first book, but I'm kind of taken away from it that it may be the earliest story that's in the Bible because it was a oral tradition. But as far as, like, it actually being written as a book of the Bible, it could have been much later. I mean, just like there's,
which is Smokey's claim that it was the first written book of the Bible. I mean, he was very specific about it. Just like there's,
the flood story in the Bible, but there was many, flood stories before the Bible was ever written.
Yeah. And it could, I don't really have much of I don't I don't have much of a dog in that fight. If they found out that Job does predate anything else, all right.
Neither do
a lot
I.
Bigger issues than that, but I mean, to say, I think it's generally kind of, I don't know. It's not dishonest per se, but it's sort of weird to be like, oh yeah, which one's the oldest one? Like, well, I don't even know if scholars agree on which one's just automatically the oldest one.
We're talking we're talking a book that was put together roughly about 2,500 years ago. I mean, 2,500 years ago.
And of course, I don't like the man, but I mean, if it was definitively shown, like if Dr. Josh comes on and he, quotes this, that, and the other expert and says, yep, Job was, then I'll be the first.
And that's why this came up. Smokey made that claim and people started pointing out, and scholars started pointing out that he was just wrong. That he's just mistaken about it. And that's why I looked into that claim, because during the course of the conversation, like, that claim didn't pop up on my radar at all. I'm like, who cares what the first book was? We're talking about the Bible here, right?
So just real quick, some folks that joined us since we started, Iron Charioteer, welcome. And Wooly Ignorant. Interesting name. How you doing there, Wooly? Thanks for coming by. As I said, the synagogue.
Wooly's been around for a while, off and on.
Oh, okay. Santi the Sane. We'll have to check you on that claim, Sane. Leo Filius is here. Thank you, folks, for showing up. Okay, to get back to the interview. So now you had said at the beginning of the interview that right around your early 30s is when you became you would identify when your atheism started and you became a non-believer. But where did the doubts start? When and where, how did you first start doubting whether, hey, wait a minute, maybe this stuff isn't true?
I had doubts even because I didn't really take church seriously as a kid until I hit about 14, and then I really got involved in the church that I was involved with, because a lot of newer people came in. For a kid that was being homeschooled, that was my only social outlet, so it was nice to have people to bounce ideas off of and stuff. And that was probably not the best environment to do that in, because if you're 14 and you're getting enthusiastic about Bible studies, you end up asking a lot of questions that make pastors nervous, and I did. And then by about the age of 16, I was politely asked to not. It was heavily implied that I should not go anymore. So because I quoted a movie once talking to somebody, and they decided, no, you're spreading a sinful satanic influence. I quoted a Star Trek movie, I think. So naturally, I had to go.
What does God need with a starship?
I don't even think that movie had been out yet. I think this was before Star Trek 5.
That's funny. When you mentioned that Harry Potter earlier, that's what led to the conflict with my family members about 10 years ago. Was they didn't want their children to watch Harry Potter, and I just thought it was the most ridiculous thing. You are denying your children imagination. I was outraged, and it led to our position now, to where I'm by myself and I have no family left.
No, don't watch Harry Potter. Read this book that talks about a guy that died and came back from the dead.
Oh man, it was a big deal, because I love good books. You don't take away a good book from a child. That's abuse, in my opinion.
Well, not only that, it's like, okay, these kids can make their brooms fly and stuff like that, and they do these like kind of curses and stuff. A lot of the magic in that kind of is almost like the sword and the stone kind of stuff, animating objects and things like that. And it's like, no, kids, this is dangerous. What I want you to do is read the book that describes the story of our Lord and Savior, God, as a human being, and his primary mode of miracle working. He was a necromancer. So, enjoy. Like there's stuff in the Old Testament. There's definitely stuff in the Old Testament that scare the crap out of a lot of kids. There's stuff in the New Testament. It's like there's a I can't remember her name, Christine something. She's an Old Testament. She's a professor of Old Testament and Hebrew Bible history at Yale, and she's like, I will not let my kids read the Bible because it's not for kids. They're not going to understand it. She's like, there's a lot of you in here who are, late teens, early 20s. Some of you have grown up in churches. A lot of the stuff I'm going to tell you, if you were a believer, you are going to have a really hard time with it. Now, I'm not going to do that to an 8-year-old. It's hard enough doing it to a 20-year-old. So, yeah, that's kind of where I stand on that.
Yeah, well, and the thing is like there's a lot to be said for the argument that maybe we shouldn't be even talking to children about religion, until they reach a certain, age of, cognizance. I mean, of course they're cognizant before they become adults, but I don't know if you'd like pre-teens and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Laying that kind of heavy stuff on them. I don't know. Welcome to Saxy Calzone. I don't know whether they were in here beforehand, but I see. And then a fella, James Hogue. This caught my eye. I don't know whether this is supposed to maybe something that they're talking about in chat, but
I'm a fan of Saxy Calzone. That guy's hilarious.
And James Hogue says, I believe Neffy holds the record for rage quits. I think he's right about that.
I kind of want to like establish that as a record for myself. I'm gonna have to change my whole thing. I'm gonna start rage quitting. But yeah, no. To get back to, I had some doubts as a kid. By the time I hit 16 and had a little bit of a falling out with that last church that I was involved with, I definitely had more doubts then. I didn't give up on the faith because of that. I still was a true and true Christian as far as I was concerned. Now, if you asked them, was I a Christian, they'd be like, not that one. And so that stuck with me even after, later on in my teens. And then, by the time I ended up, moving off to university, I stayed more or less. I was politically conservative. I was still a Christian. As I got through college and got exposed to more stuff and did a little bit more reading, I started slipping away. The fundamentalist stuff, any of that stuff that sort of stayed there, slipped away, and then I ended up becoming more of a deist, I guess. And then I was in my late 20s, and I was dating a girl who she was from Japan, and so she was, I think it's like 95% of the Japanese are atheists. And we got into a discussion about it. We never really discussed it before, and we got into it. And her whole thing was basically the problem of evil. She couldn't get around that. There's no God. If there was, it wouldn't allow this. A kid with cancer. Why would a loving God do that? And for her, Christianity just sounded kind of creepy. Her family participated in Buddhist and Shinto rituals, and New Year's and all that kind of stuff. No issue with that. But a lot of the stuff that she knew about Christianity, she just found to be almost a cult, and she, and that was actually kind of interesting because when I talked to her about it, I was like, I dealt with people who had said stuff like that before, but I never really looked into it. And I looked into it and then discovered there's this issue called problem of evil. And to wrap this up, I ended up after college and I ended up getting a job in a security firm that involved a lot of late nights and a very quiet post. And I dusted off the library card and read more on that job than probably 6 times more than I read even when I was in college. And I basically just decided I was going to attack my own opinions about political ideology and religion and started reading. And over time, about a year and a half into that, as a steady practice, day in and day out, just reading different stuff from people that I had originally agreed with, and then reading stuff from people that I thought going into it, I'm never going to agree with this person. That changed my mind. So,
well, and it's amazing what education can do for you. when you get outside your box and look at different ideas, it's amazing the effect that can have on certain people.
Well, yeah. Not only that, though, I've often said that I find the problem of evil to be the most compelling argument against God, and I think Christians do too. It's why they attack it nonstop. But it was pretty much what led me out of Christianity as well. It was, I was raised into a form of Christianity that if you had faith, God would take care of you. And it really, you could sin and all of that, but as long as you had faith, God was going to take care of you. And then you grow older and you start learning about the world, and you learn, hey, no, these, to use a modern example, the children in Yemen, they have faith. They have perhaps more faith than I do. If you look at Islam, they're really specific about their faith, and they actually have to do shit as opposed to just going to a building every week. So yeah. So when you look at those situations and you see the reality of the world, that hey, yes, this problem of evil when it comes to the God question is very real. I think it leads a lot of people to doubting the faith that they were so strong in, because like you know, I joked around like the dinosaurs were probably my first crisis of faith, but I think it's really that problem of evil that told me, hey, you know, at least this Christianity, this isn't the right thing. I need to look into other religions and see if I can find some truth there, because this is bullshit.
Well, and you know, I didn't know it at the time when I converted, you know, out of religion, and it's not until way later when I started learning more about, you know, philosophy and the, you know, religious apologetic arguments, that I could look back on that time when I had my doubts and stopped believing in God, that it was the problem. I didn't identify it as such, but it was the problem of evil that brought me out of believing, you know, because I didn't know what to call it. But it's hard to believe there's an all-loving being out there taking care of all of us when, you know, children are dying of cancer. The idea that, well, if you're just faithful, you know, I remember a long time, maybe even as many as 15, 20 years ago. I don't even remember when that show, The View, started, but whenever the big tsunami was over in the Indian Ocean, and many people died. And I remember I was watching, it was a clip or it was the actual episode of The View. And that one woman that was on The View, Star Jones, they were talking about the tsunami, and she said, "Oh man, you know what? I had a plane ticket and I was scheduled to go over there and visit this one country. And if I had gone, I'd be dead right now. But God was looking over me." And I thought to myself, oh yeah, God was looking over you, and fuck them other, you know, million people that died. But he saved the star. Yep.
Well, I don't know how true this is. I heard this a long time ago, and I've been meaning to like really research this and make a video about it if it's true. But I heard a long time ago that modern atheists sprang up because there was this city on a coast somewhere, and very religious city. Everybody went to church, and a tsunami came while everybody was at the church. So the whole city was at church when this tsunami came and killed the entire fucking city. I don't know how true this is. I heard it a long time ago, but I'm definitely want to try to look into it to see how true it is, because I think that would be fascinating if there's any truth to that story.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one. That is interesting. I'll see if I can dig around and find out if there's anything to that.
Hey, Doc, do you have any idea, is P. Mars' band probably P. Mars?
Oh yeah. Well, you know, so I banned the P. Mars account, but if his sock accounts come in and prove to me that they're not going to drop the N word in the chat, I'll let them come in and at least participate in chats. Baby steps, P. Mars. Baby steps.
Well, and I mean, I don't mean to imply that.
It's definitely P. Mars though.
He hasn't said anything untoward so far, but he is in there, you know, saying some stupid shit like the problem of evil isn't even a problem. LOL. I'm
waiting for him to.
I really find it to be an ignorant argument. He says about the problem of evil. So
I would ask him. I know this. I probably shouldn't bait him. Which argument for the problem of evil? No, and then give him some time to Google it.
Yeah, right.
I think P. Mars' problem of evil would be that he's so beautiful and he's the product of God because he's pretty. So there's no problem of evil.
I tried getting very briefly. I think I was with G-Man. I don't remember whose stream it was on, but G-Man came in. I think we started talking about that. It's either G-Man. I know I've tried doing this a couple of times with Jesus is Lord, and I think with One Way, and it never goes anywhere because I have a slightly different take on the problem of evil. And anytime I've tried to like get into that with them, they're like, nope.
Well, so, right, and and the thing is too is that you know, if you're a real fundamentalist Christian, or maybe even, you know, your baseline Christian, I can see why you wouldn't find the problem of evil a problem, because if, you know, like in that debate that Schuyler had over on modern day debate, the synagogue that's in here in our live chat now basically said, when asked, so if God, you know, kills a baby, it's moral. Yep. So I mean, when you have to argue for drowning babies and slicing pregnant women's bellies open with swords, that it's okay.
And if you guys indulge me after you're done with your questions, the interview's over. I guess the only thing I would, because I'm kind of curious, I can lay out what I think is a pretty good dispute of sort of a couple of the major defenses, or like the way that these guys attack the problem of evil, because I think they overlook one.
Yeah, let's definitely
really
go into that, because we can finish the interview portion up in about 5-10 minutes here. And
real quick, I think that Christians attack the problem of evil because it's a problem for them. So, like, the problem of evil doesn't take away God; it just takes away the Christian God, right? Like, that was my problem. That's my problem with the Christian God. When I left Christianity, is it couldn't be this this multiple omni God anymore. And that's what the problem of evil does, is it takes away that Christian God. It still leaves you with a God. There could still be a God out there, but it's really kind of taking away that monolithic God. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is too, like the problem of evil does nothing to refute deism. I mean,
it didn't for me.
Huh?
It didn't for me. Like when I dealt with it, with this particular girlfriend that I was dating at the time, I thought it was interesting to hear it from somebody who seemed very personally motivated by that argument. The problem of evil was for her was like, no, whatever Christianity is about, what little bit she knew about it, she's just like, I don't need any of that kind of stuff. Part of that, I think, was because, her traditions and stuff are, family religions and stuff. It was Buddhism and Shinto. So, she could take it or leave it, but she objected to that aspect of it so strenuously that I was kind of curious. But when I looked into it, any of that kind of stuff, you always had, like, you have the character building, theodicy or whatever they call them. God allows this kind of stuff to happen because it makes you a better person. This is like a testing ground, and so these horrible things that happen to you for a reason. Because he's building a better Christian or upgrading your soul or forging it in the fire or whatever. I probably would have gone along with that argument back when I was a believer.
I like that argument. Earth is Arrakis for all you Dune fans out there.
Right, exactly.
I love Shinto. I always order the Shinto with egg roll.
Terrible.
Anyway, yeah, I know. I'm Mr. Dad jokes, But actually, the other night, Knock was Mr. Dad jokes for about 2 hours.
I thought it was great. I mean, I still kind of laugh when I still get the chuckles.
Well, and the thing is too, it was so beautiful because all of you delivered all of them with like this deadpan, like a lot of there's comedians out there that'll drop a joke and then they'll laugh at it themselves and stuff, which is good for some comedians, but you just like. You kind of laid those jokes out as if it was like a real statement you were trying to make, man.
I had to keep myself on mute when I wasn't speaking because I was laughing so fucking hard.
So, at any rate, you say your doubts started maybe in your late teen years, but you took that doubt to mean, well, I need to kind of double down, do some more research, and and find out where my faith should actually be. These doubts are just I want to learn more now. And then you got into your later 20s and met this girl, and then she really started you thinking. And as you said, you became an atheist in your early 30s. Now, can you look back at that time and point to like an exact moment where you said, "Yep, no, I can't believe in that God shit anymore"? Tell us about that.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, even during my 20s and stuff, when I was at university, I would have conversations, and I remember the RA that was on my floor was a campus crusader. And so when we started talking about religion a little bit, he was like, "Oh, I didn't realize that you're a Christian brother." And I was like, I started to like pump the brakes on that. I'm like, yeah, I kind of got kicked out of my church at 16. I believe in it, but I had a belly full of church, and so even then I was sort of pushing away from it. Like I could have become like a John the Baptist type of Christian, but I don't think I would ever made it back into a church. But that carried with me all throughout. So I definitely had my doubts about churches and denominations and certain dogmatic beliefs, but God stuck with it. But once I started kind of getting into So, I mean, the seeds of doubt had been there for quite a while. But then by the time I hit my 30s, I remember, like I said, I had this crappy job as a security guard working second and third shifts, sometimes long hours. Some of those shifts were 12 and 14 hours, middle of the night, nothing to do but, drink coffee and read. And at the time I was a smoker too. So that, keeps the brain going. And so I just started reading anybody and everybody that I could find. And it was actually like after getting into it, I would discuss some of this stuff with my younger sister. And the more I hadn't really been exposed to too many people. I didn't get into like Dawkins or any, Daniel Dennett. But Sam Harris actually did have a lot of really good arguments that I liked. When I first heard him sort of like articulating things, he was putting into words doubts that I had. In fact, and he put him in a way that I didn't even realize the full scope of my doubts until I heard some from him. And then Christopher Hitchens, I didn't agree with everything that Christopher Hitchens had said. And I had been a fan. Like I said, I was politically conservative. I had read some of his books before. He wrote a book in the 90s called No One Left to Lie To about Bill Clinton. So I'd been a fan of his. I saw him live in person. He did a thing at my university. He'd done a book about Thomas Jefferson. So when I started getting into like looking into atheists versus believers and stuff, I looked into some of his books, and he put together, I didn't read God Isn't Great. That came much, much later. And I have some disagreements with him in that book, but he had a reader. He had an atheist reader, and it was just a collection of different things that he put together. And I got that one day from the library, and I had it sitting down, and I was kind of skimming through it and reading different essays and stuff. But he had one in there as a poem for I should have looked it up. It's a poem from Omar Khayyam, a Muslim atheist, and he basically the poem. I think it's the Rubaiyat, or at least part of the Rubaiyat, and it's just this great poem about it. It's about being human. And it really, I mean, there aren't a lot of poems that make, give me an emotional reaction. But that one, when I read it, I was like, this is great. It was just this very down to earth, but almost a kind of like a very romantic idea of like being human and being brutally honest about it. And I thought this is a beautiful poem. It's a great piece. And when I read that, it stuck with me for weeks and weeks and weeks. And, at some point, I was probably like 30, 31. I remember there was a day I was having a smoke. I was on the job. It was a nice day in the fall, I think, and I'm out in the middle of nowhere. And I remember the realization kicked in that I didn't believe. It was an awareness. So it wasn't. I was no longer convinced of my religion. And the interesting thing about it was, it wasn't so much that I realized, oh, there is no God. It was, I don't have to believe this anymore. And I don't have to pretend.
Was that an emotional moment for you at all?
Yeah, in the sense that I had this big grin on my face and felt an enormous amount of relief. Yeah. It was just this huge weight that came off me. And I was like, yeah, I can just let that go. I can be honest and be, I've heard enough arguments from both sides, and I've looked at this, and now it's like, I do feel confident that this is where I am. So
real quick, the way you put that is perfect. I mean, I think I've been trying to find a way to explain exactly what you just said, because that's kind of how I live my life. Like I'm an atheist. I don't believe in any God, but at the same time, it was never about it's like I stopped caring. It was about not. I don't have to believe in this shit anymore. Like I can continue my life and not believe in that anymore. And I'm perfectly fine. That's what this has been about for me. And the way you said that was like perfect. I'm going to have to quote that shit. And that's going to become like the slogan of what I try to do here, because, people say that I hate God. I don't really care about God. What I care about is telling people you don't have to believe in this shit. You're going to be the same person. In fact, for me, I've become a much better person. It's been a progress, but I've become a much better person because I put away all that baggage. So I think you said that perfectly.
Thanks. So could you also, when you remember what the name of that poem is, could you DM that to me?
Sure. Yeah.
I'll be able to read that. But so when you had that epiphany and, it took this big weight off your shoulders, did you share that newfound non-belief with anybody right away, like with your family? And
like I didn't share it with my folks because my folks are it's funny that Knock brought up Arrakis and Dune. My mom is like a Stargate Christian. That's what I call her. Like she's sort of like, she likes the idea of like alien civilizations, ancient aliens, that kind of stuff. She digs that stuff. And so the idea that God is just this like Cthulhu, but with a conscience kind of thing that just lives in another galaxy, and maybe there's some panspermia involved in all this stuff. She digs that kind of stuff.
Xenu is real.
Yeah. She has no problem exercising her imagination. She's a big Star Trek nut and everything. So, and she loved Dune. So she has no problem dealing with that kind of stuff. So, but I didn't really share any, the fact that I was, the churches that we spent all that time in. Yeah. I have, comfortably come to the conclusion that was all a waste of time. Thanks for thanks for the childhood. I never brought it up to my dad either.
But your parents know now though.
They've known for a while. And so I guess the first people I shared it with, my younger sister was sort of, I don't know if I had any influence on her or not. I'm kind of curious. When you guys asked me to do this interview, I was like, man, I should probably ask her and see. She might have been before me. She might have actually been pushing that a little earlier. But then, I started talking to my twin brother, Jay, about it. And he was still a believer, but he was very much in the kind of deistic camp and he was like I was. It wasn't so much that he needed to believe. It wasn't so much that he actually was convinced that there's a God. It was more or less like, yeah, you should believe in it. Because of the basic argument from ignorance. Well, where did all this stuff come from? What's the purpose? How do we get any of this stuff? So, God seems like a pretty good explanation, a pretty good reason for that. And, shouldn't we kind of like believe in that? And I might be misrepresenting his views at the time a little bit. So, but he'll point that out if he gets a chance.
And Pascal's wager too. That always like.
A little bit.
I get Pascal's wager more than I get anything. Like when people figure out what my tattoo says, or if they hear me talking to a friend, because usually I try not to talk about the atheism in public, but at work I have friends. That's what I always get. It's like, don't you think that you should just rather believe just in case you go to hell? And I'm like, oh God, let's have a conversation.
It's so that argument is so ridiculous to me, because first of all, if that, so what, you're going to believe to hedge your bets.
Like God wouldn't know I was faking it, right?
Well, right. You need to hedge your bets. And and the other thing is you can't really consciously choose what you're going to believe. It's your beliefs. You come to your beliefs by taking in information, and then the belief is formed,
Right.
Like with Jefferson, he didn't, that day he remembers back when he was 30 or 31, he didn't, say, you know what, I gotta convince myself not to believe anymore. It just dawned on him, wow, I don't believe that stuff anymore,
Yeah. I think one of the shorthands I've come across is not so much, a little bit of the Pascal wager, but it's always that kind of the beginning of the argument from incredulity is like, well, where did all this stuff come from? Mm-hmm. So I developed a shorthand response to that one, like, what makes you think that any of this stuff wasn't inevitable?
Yeah.
Why are you asking? Like, there must have been an absence of all of this stuff, and the reason we've got any of this stuff was given to us. Like, okay, well, the opposite could also be the case. There wasn't anything to help this stuff show up in the first place, and a lot of this stuff is stuff if you think about it, is shit you don't want, like mosquitoes, diseases,
or
chaos.
99.9% of the universe that's deadly to us.
Right? Yeah.
And the thing is so many Christian apologetics arguments simply boil down to there's stuff, therefore God.
Yeah. Yeah. And that stuff must have been granted, because without God, there would have been nothing. And it's like, okay, take a deep breath and contemplate. Can you really wrap your head around the absence of everything? That's nothing. And given what physicists know about the universe, it seems to me, it's sort of like, when these guys come up with these, like the mathematical improbability of life. It's not that improbable if you think about the scope of the universe. It doesn't, it's like, if you have an infinite number of monkeys and an infinite amount of time all typing on an infinite number of typewriters, they're going to type out all the works of Shakespeare an infinite number of times. And
the other thing is too, is like, there's a school of thought out there that the reason that we haven't encountered any alien species is we may be singularly alone in the universe. You know, I mean, the probabilities say not, but it's still a possibility that out of this whole big universe, intelligent life aware of its own existence may only be on this planet.
Wouldn't it be sad if they stopped by
paradox,
either during like they stopped by, the Fermi paradox, or the other one would be like, they took a look. What if they stopped by during the Inquisition or during World War II and just took a look and were like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Or during the Trump election, 2016, and just
right.
like, oh my God,
the 3 years since then.
Yeah, I had a spell where I was really depressed and suicidal, and I think it was because, I mean, I'm talking in my wild days, y'all, but I mean, I used to do gas a lot, different kinds of gases. It was a stage. So it could have been because of the effects that was having on my brain. But I had about 2 years to where I thought aliens would be up up in space looking down at us, like deciding on whether or not they're going to include us into this universal life system, and all they would see would be a bunch of hairless monkeys jacking off, laughing at a flashing screen, and they're like, fuck this shit, I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, or it could be just like in Star Trek. There's like what is it, it's not the Prime Directive, but or maybe it is part of the Prime Directive where they can't contact a species until they have warp power or something like that.
I guarantee you what I just said will make it into a Smokey Saint video. I guarantee it.
I'll double down on that, because the worst thing, I mean, I compared it to like they show up and they see us at our worst, but I think what you said might be lead more towards this. What if they showed up and saw us at our best, like the height of the Enlightenment or the Renaissance, and they kind of take a look at Athens at the height of its democracy and artistic output, and we're just like, yeah, no, pass.
yeah. See the best of us and still pass.
Yeah.
So to kind of wrap this up now, did you, once you were an atheist and then you got to the point where you were sharing it with, friends and family, did you suffer any social repercussions from it?
Not really. I mean, I did try to keep it kind of, because like I said, I still live and work in the Midwest, and where I work is there's still quite a bit of conservative, Christians around. So I don't really, it doesn't really get spread around at work or anything like that. Other than the fact that I think it's unusual that my boss and I will still talk about it openly. But no, other than
he's a believer.
Well, he was actually, he's gone on a weird journey. I don't think that most Christians convert people, right? And if they're being honest, if they're real Christians, they know it's the Holy Spirit converting people through them. But I don't give myself this much credit for anything. But my brother did say that the conversations that he had with me after I kind of came out as an atheist did affect the way he approached it. I don't think he really converted until like I said, he got into YouTube. He started watching the Atheist Alliance or the Atheist Experience and stuff like that. And he would then call me up and say, have you ever heard of this argument before? They were going back and forth on this. And so we'd talk about it a little bit. And then that was sort of the beginning of his thing. So we'd had lots of discussions, usually over, a bottle or 3 of wine. So I don't know how much he credits me with that, but I mean, that definitely had to be an influence. He then got into more YouTube stuff and started debating it and stuff. And then with the friend of mine who's now my boss, when we started discussing it, he was very much, he was a younger creationist, more or less. He had his issues with it because he was very into science, but he was willing to accept that the Earth was only 6,000 years old. Very fundamentalist, no gay marriage. He was one of these Federation guys. There's God, the husband, dad, and then the mother, wife, and then the kids kind of thing. The woman stays at home, and he's lived that life. His wife stays at home. He's got 4 kids. I can't remember. Lots of kids. He started off in sort of this quiverful, fundamentalist Christian mode. And we've been having debates and stuff and arguing over time. He has since left his conservative Presbyterian church. They no longer attend anymore. I don't know if it's my influence or The Handmaid's Tale on Hulu, because I found out later his wife was watching that. So I'm pretty sure it's that. That's what picked him. That's what forced him out of church.
That first season is brutal, man. I'm like, like I was watching, I was like, fuck this.
And she ended up developing kind of I guess at one point she looked at him and was like, is this the group that we're going to? Is this how other people in society look at us? She's like, because I'm watching the show and seeing these biddies just being horrible to each other, and I can sympathize with this. Like she's like, there are women in the church that act like this, and if they had the means and they had the power, they would do this. Is this what we are? And at that point, she stopped going. I think he'd gotten into arguments and stuff with one of the pastors they had, and then that sort of pushed him out. And so now more and more, he and I end up talking. When we talk about anything, we end up talking about the hopeful coming of the singularity when we can upload our consciousnesses into machines and then live long enough to watch the heat death of this galaxy.
Dude,
I think we're close to that shit.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Like, John, have you ever heard that? Like that's the thing now. Like,
no. Dude,
this could be in our lifetimes. Maybe.
Kind of interrupted me. I was jumping right on that because that's because that's what I like. Like when me and my family or a couple friends of mine that still believe in God get talking about that. I always tell them, I'm just waiting. My God is I'm just waiting around for robot bodies, and I've said for years, okay. Everything you are and everything you'll ever be is in the 3 pounds of gray matter up in your skull.
Yep.
Your body is nothing but a life support system and an information gathering system for your brain. Okay. You are your brain. So if the technology ever comes along to where they can transplant my brain into an artificial body, download my consciousness into an artificial body, download my consciousness into some framework in a computer like that Black Mirror episode, sign me the fuck up, man.
As long as they don't turn that song on and play it in repeat. I do not want a reality, simulated or otherwise, where that thing is on all the time.
But that song that came out of Black Mirror that they had in several episodes.
Yeah, I hope I'm not doing any spoilers for the White Christmas one. The way the White Christmas episode ends, it's like that. That actually, I watched that one and I had to put the coffee down. I was like, holy shit! I'm trying to get a panic attack. I don't like that.
Maybe the earworm did it.
Yeah.
But yeah, sign me up for that shit. I mean, because I don't see any upside in dying. I think it's better to be than to not be. Now, if I'm some old person and I have like ailments and all that and pain and or if I end up getting the same thing my mom has where she's got the Alzheimer's and is slowly her brain's going away, well then euthanize my ass. But if the potential comes out to go on living, I don't care what form it's in. I've had people tell me when I bring that up, well, how could you, be disembodied? Like your life is so centered around what your body can do and everything. I said, look, by the time the technology comes along to be able to do that, you're still going to be able to feel and all that stuff because all of that, all your senses and, your tactile responses, your smells and everything, you're not actually feeling things with your hands. You're not actually smelling things with your nose. You're feeling and smelling things with your brain. So by the time that technology came along, you would still be able to feel all those sensations.
I think we're still pretty far out of like the whole robot thing, like preserving our brains and putting it into a robot or whatever. But I do think that we're fairly close to being able to upload our consciousness into a simulation. So I think that might happen within our natural lifetimes.
The only thing though with that way of thinking is it rules out what Jeff brought up about the singularity. There's going to be a point that they theorize there's going to be a point that when they hit the singularity, that technology will just exponentially grow out of this singularity. And there's a project out there, look it up online. It's called the 2045 project. And they, kind of like that, computer chip thing where it doubles in, doubles in computing power every 18 months or something like that. They look out into the future into 2045 and, the direction that the technology is taking now, they reckon that by 2045 that that'll be when they'll be able to download or transplant a consciousness into an artificial body.
Yeah, I think that was. I mean, Kurzweil, he was the guy that came up with that idea of singularity. I think he was aiming for 2045 and 2050, and he has like a fitness and supplement regimen that would choke Ruth Bader Ginsburg, because he's just trying to make it that far.
Yep.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. The implications of what will end up happening as far as like machine learning and then AI is whether or not, because I think what will end up happening is like a couple of stages. What they'll end up doing is, in order to teach AI how to map this stuff, because eventually we're not going to crack it. If it gets cracked, it's going to be an AI doing it, and the only way to teach them that is to basically map out consciousness for them. And so that could end up being the first stage, where you just like, okay, if we can map what the most that we can map out of individual brains and thinking and thought processes, feed this into this AI so it can learn from it. And then as it learns from it, eventually it figures out how to like reproduce it so that you move from your body to the other thing. The other implication too is that whether or not that's actually you or not.
Yeah.
It's
definitely fascinating. I'll have to look into that singularity. I haven't looked into that yet.
Singularity, and look up the 2045 project.
Yeah, I'll look up that because I have been looking into AI and I know people are already looking at ways like when we die, being able to upload our consciousness. And yeah, we're not here, but we would never actually really know that. So
I wouldn't give a shit if I did know. I mean, because
neither would I, as long as I know. As long as I know something, right?
And then just one final question, as far as your story, Jeff. So do you still feel the same way today, as far as like when you look at, the some of the things that are going on in the world with religiosity? Do you still kind of have that weight off your shoulder kind of feeling, even 10 years later, that you don't believe that stuff anymore?
I mean, yeah, personally, I don't feel like any of that, at the end of the day, I can kind of push that off. But I mean, I went through my own phase of being kind of angry about the idea that, I had grown up with all these ideas and then I was able to jettison them. So there was a certain amount of like anger and animosity towards organized religions in general, the idea that they'd kind of foisted this stuff onto me even as a kid. And it ends up making you feel like it was a waste of time. But now I look at it and reflect on it, I'm like, there was no other way this was going to happen. And so I kind of went from being pretty disrespectful of almost all religions, and specifically, like, I would describe myself as a hard atheist when it came to Christianity. When it came to other religions, I just didn't care. Like, I didn't grow up in those traditions. They have less weight. I don't believe in their gods, same as any other Christian wouldn't. But now, I don't really approach them with the same arguments. Like I don't go after an argument against Christianity by saying I hate the Bible and I don't like the New Testament. I actually started studying it because what I thought was really persuasive about it is that the more you study it, especially from a scholarly point of view, you can respect the fact that they wrote this stuff. I don't agree with it. I don't take it literal. But I respect it for the traditions it's involved in. I respect it for the, what it's provided in terms of, just exciting the imagination of people in different cultures over, over millennia. But that being said, so, when somebody comes at me and says, well, you hate God, you hate the Bible, you hate Jesus, like, none of that's true. I don't hate the Bible. If I hated it, I wouldn't study it. I wouldn't study it with textbooks. I wouldn't study it with other references. I just, if you disagree with my take on it, I expect that because you're a fundamentalist Christian or you're, devout in some way. You have theological stuff you have to bring into this. I don't. And so, I still feel that sense of liberty now more than ever because I can study the Bible in a way that I wasn't free to when I was a believer.
So I see your brother Jay is in the live chat. Welcome, Jay. And also Alias Fake Name just showed up. That's a great name for the internet. Alias Fake Name.
Stole my
reminiscent of sock account. But all right. So now there was something else you want to talk to that was inspired by some banter in the chat, and as a matter of fact, that gentleman is still there. I use the term gentleman loosely. P. Mars' band is his name in the live chat, but you wanted to share with us some of your anti-apologetics for the for the problem of evil. Isn't that
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So when it comes up a lot,
and just real quick before you get rolling, knock, I have to go AFK for a minute because, well, there's one of those nature things I got to take care of. But go ahead, Jeff.
So yeah, one of the things that comes up with the problem of evil, I think it gets missed is the definitions of evil. And so there are generally kind of two different versions of it. This comes up with Christians quite a bit because Christians will bring up that verse in Isaiah where it says, God, I create evil. It's God speaking. I create evil. And a lot of Christians and a lot of apologists will be like, no. That doesn't mean evil. That's a mistranslation. What he says is he creates catastrophes or cataclysms or something like that, calamity. And so that's different. It's not evil. The problem is, like Knock mentioned before, if you're still reading into all the omnibenevolent, omniscient, omnipotent stuff for this God, the problem of evil becomes a lot weirder because for us, there's a distinction that we make between natural evil and moral evil, right? A moral evil is something that we made a decision to do something bad. You know, we harmed someone, we harmed others, or we neglected to help when we knew we could, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then the natural evil would be something like a typhoon wipes out a town, a earthquake, the forest fire that kills the baby deer. Those are the natural evils. Well, if you believe in that God is held to a different standard, because if that God not only created everything and set it in motion, but he's actually has the capacity to change things, alter things, or manage things, depending on what your parameters are, all evil is moral evil for that being. There is no such thing as a calamity. Natural evil does not occur for God. And that's an implication that I think a lot of Christians miss when they start discussing that. And I know they miss it when they bring up the Isaiah thing. They're like, well, no, it's not evil in the sense that he's doing something nasty or doing something bad. It's evil in the sense that there's a calamity. A bunch of people dropped into a hole or something. Like, no. For him, that's still a moral evil.
That's a great point, and I think I miss that a lot of the times. And I need to incorporate that more because I intend to say that I think when I'm talking about the problem of evil, but then I do tend to focus on what I'm passionate about, which, like, politically for the last several years has been ending the embargo in Yemen. Before that, it was the children of Aleppo and the Syrian conflict. So I tend to focus more on man-made evil, as opposed to just the natural evil that God would be more responsible for. So yeah, that's a really, really great point.
And I think I discussed this with Veckel. I tried to give the example of, let's say that you're a scientist, you live in Florida, and as a scientist, you come up with a method that allows you to accurately predict, 100% accuracy, devastating hurricanes, thunderstorms, tornadoes, all this stuff. And at some point, your device, your method triggers a warning. Now you're the only one that has this thing. It hasn't rolled out yet. You've got it. And you know that a devastating hurricane, one of the worst ones, is barreling right towards Miami, and no one else knows about it. You have this knowledge, and it's definitely going to happen. That individual can either neglect to share that information, or they can share that information, right? If that happened and it came out, let's say that the hurricane hits, it wipes out Miami, no one knew about it, no one had an opportunity to evacuate, it kills as many people as it could possibly kill, and then they find out later, oh, you had this methodology that was able to predict that hurricane, and it did predict that hurricane, you knew about it in advance, and you did nothing, you said nothing to no one. That person, by our standards, is a moral monster. But God does this all the time. That is the exact standard for God, because even if you want to say he didn't have the power to affect that hurricane, okay, so he's not all powerful in that sense. Did he know it was coming? Why didn't he warn anybody? So even in that case, it's like this idea of the two stages, the two types of morality or two types of evil that we have, because they're based on our limited abilities and our limits of knowledge. You have natural evil, you have moral evil. For that being, even if he lacks omnipotence, he just has omniscience, or at least sufficient knowledge, much greater than ours, it's still a moral evil because he still has the capacity to do something, and he doesn't.
And the omnibenevolent part would mean he would want to do something, but doesn't. Yeah.
Right.
So,
Now, the only way they
yeah.
can get around that is to say it would actually, he has to allow it because allowing that evil prevents either a greater evil or it builds so much sufficiently good character that it's necessary for it to happen. They can turn around and make that claim, but then again, the distinctions about evil don't match, and that's my biggest issue is that separation of the categories of evil.
So just real quick, first of all, your brother seems surprised in the chat. He said you put on a nice shirt for this.
It's not a nice shirt; it just has a collar.
And then the synagogue CJ says, this is why I prefer to talk about God as divine author. An author cannot be separated from his work. Did George Lucas cause Anakin to become Vader, to kill children, destroy liberty? Well, yeah.
Does the synagogue? Okay, well, if that's the case, then nobody should be condemned of anything. If God is a divine author, then Anakin becoming Vader is the work of that author and not the work of some moral failing or weakness. Mm-hmm. So how is anyone condemned for doing what the story has laid out as a script?
And Ocean Keltoy lays out a really good argument for exactly what you're saying right now. You should go check it out. It's on his channel, CJ. You can find it. But he lays out an argument why God is the only one deserving to actually go to hell. It's really good. You should go check it out.
I did watch that one. I don't remember it entirely. I think I watched it when I was a little bit.
Yeah, I can't quite remember what it's called, but like if you look, CJ, you'll find it, and then we'll have a conversation. Email me, CJ.
Well, as a matter of fact, now that Knock brought that up, because we are spending time talking about the problem of evil, I will link that Ocean Keltoy video in the video description. And then just to ask you real quick, Jeff, is there any other links that you would like people to know about aside from your YouTube channel?
Yeah, I got. I mean, this channel, I've been working on hooking it up to other social media. So I do have a Facebook channel, Jefferson Spatchcock. I've got a Twitter channel, and I can. Do you want me to? I could give you those links in the private chat if you want to move them over.
If you could DM me on Discord, DM me any links that you want in the video description, and I will get them in there.
Okay.
And now, who's this fucking joker?
Greetings programs.
Here, I'll do this, Jay, just so you can make your joke. Jay.
Horseface killer.
No, Jay didn't bite on that. I thought I was going to get the why the long face.
Oh, it's fucking played out, John. It's played the fuck out.
That setup never gets old. I'm sorry, it doesn't.
So I think we have ground to a halt here, except to ask Jay. He popped in. Is there anything that you popped in here anything specifically you popped in here that you wanted to say?
Just came in here to act as an agent of chaos and destroy your show.
Oh, okay.
Consistent with his avatar, yeah.
Some people just want to see the world burn.
Yeah.
If you've been throwing away any valuable items like rubies, I'd like to know about it.
Oh, no, yeah. I haven't found any yet. I would like to point out, I didn't know you held any animosity towards religion after you converted to atheism there, bro.
I mean, a little bit, other than, to kind of get a little whipped up into things like I wanted something like Jesus Camp or something like that. That'll, if you've gone from being a Christian.
That when we were Christians.
Yeah, but that was still, that's still an effective documentary because you watch that and it's just like, oh, these people are nuts. But yeah, no, I mean that was still there a little bit, and even now, like my issues aren't with the notions of God. It's not with the concepts of it. It's not really even with like Christianity or the Bible. It's with what people use that stuff for. So that stuff I still like get ticked off about, especially if they're dishonest about it. Like, well, I have to, this is the way people should be, and my God says you can't be gay. Don't do gay stuff. It's like, okay, those are two different things, idiot. You didn't even bother to think it through. You're just like, oh, my God says no, that's bad, and you're naughty.
Yeah, God lost me at shrimp. I'm like, the moment God was like, no, don't eat shrimp, I'm like, you're a dick.
For me, I bring this up way too often, but when you read the list of kosher stuff, the ones that are specifically banned, eagles is in that list, and that I always get a laugh out of that. Like, why would you have to be told not to eat an eagle? Like,
Oh, they look delicious.
Especially since,
delicious.
as Dr. Josh usually says, it's like you don't normally make a law against something that people weren't doing. So it's like, how many of these people were just going out and killing eagles and eating them? Like,
Well, you know what? If Ben Franklin had had his way, we might be eating eagles on Thanksgiving and holding up turkeys as the national bird.
in the Trump era, the turkey would be a better national symbol than the
Yeah,
Agreed.
especially one holding its head up in the rain and just drowning in place.
In fact,
That's a
I
myth.
propose
That's a
that from now
That's a
on, we change the word turkey to Trumpy.
No, you got to go to. We got to
I
go.
eat,
to,
I,
you gotta
I
go to
eat way
chicken.
too much. I eat way too much Trumpy lunch meat. Then,
No, you got to go to. You got to go to chickens. First of all, the meat is less flavorful than turkey, and their overwhelming stupidity. The enormity of their stupidity is overwhelming.
yes,
That's how the line goes. That's
So,
from Werner Herzog.
I thought of it this morning, and Jeff reached out to you, but you must not have been up yet. I sent you a link on Discord, and we were going to make this a 2-person interview. I'm glad now that didn't happen, because I got to tell you, your brother Jeff was the easiest person I've ever interviewed.
I'm easy.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, just because he has a lot of knowledge, and he tells a good story, and you ask Jeff a question, and then you can ask a question like 5 minutes later.
You don't have my brother and Ozzy Mandiaz Ramsey's in the same hangout.
Oh, really? Now I
It'll take
want
him 20 minutes.
to put them together just because you said that.
It'll take him 20 minutes to explain one thing, and then it'll take 30 minutes for Ozzy to explain one thing. It's ridiculous.
I think that's unfair. I'm more like 25.
25. So we're actually, if we want to ever have one of those old school 8 to 12 hour hangouts with the fewest number of people, Jefferson, Ozymandias, and sock account, and then just step back.
Oh, don't forget Floyd and Hogtie Champ.
Oh. So, Jay is Jeff's brother. And if you don't know Jay has a channel here on YouTube. And if you're a late nighter, if you're up at 4 a.m. and you don't have anything to do, pop over to Jay's channel and see, he might be streaming. You never know. He's one of those late night streamers.
Yeah, I live in the past. That's why I live in the past.
Well, for us, for anybody on the East Coast, the right coast, as it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always sleeping usually when you're streaming, so I usually miss the fun.
Most people are. I did those predominantly when I started doing those. I thought about it because there were some people that I knew from across the pond that were up. That was prime time for them. Prime evening for them. So I'd get on there and I'd get a few people in there from like Simon Spunk. It's some I don't know if it's necessarily easier for him, but sometimes he'll join. And there are some guys from Australia that used to join in.
I just thought that comment, fit in with what you were talking about.
Thanks, Clockwork.
Again, DM me on Discord, those other links you were talking about. But
Sure, yeah.
Please tell us about your channel and anything else you want to, shill or what have you.
Yours. I thought he was talking to me. I'm sorry.
No, I already talked about your channel. You don't get this shit.
I'll shut the fuck up.
My channel's just basic, just general musings and rantings and stuff. But I'm trying to branch out into a few things. At least I'm trying to integrate other social media stuff in there so I can get a little bit more stuff out there. I've been trying to do interviews with some people on YouTube that I've known for a while, or at least have recognized. I did one with Dr. Josh. That was the first one I did with my channel, and I think it went okay. And that Dr. Josh is, really, he was great. He took the time to do that, and he's a really good interview subject. I'm hoping to. I haven't gotten around to it because I've been prepping for this debate, but I am hoping that I can get Naka into a video because he's been around for a little while now. And I'm trying to get Skylar Fiction. I wanted to interview him because he's been around since the early days of the G hangouts and stuff. Kind of like, maybe do a blast from the past thing where I can pick his brain about how he thinks things have evolved since when he started to now. But I guess he's easier to reach on Twitter. I tried emailing him, and I didn't hear back from him. But apparently that's common for him. So I gotta like tweet at him and see.
Yeah, you gotta poke him like a bear.
I'll definitely do it. Just reach out to me, and I can schedule it in.
Okay.
And then, so Jeff, tell us about the debate you just alluded to.
So it's on Math Pig's channel. He was nice enough to set that up. I'm going to be debating Praise the Yam that I am, or whatever his name is.
Praise I want to be Dr. Josh.
He is a yam.
I was just going to say, I was like, did you just call him a yam?
Yeah. What is it? Praise I am that I am. So I just turned it to Praise the Yam that I am.
Yeah.
So he and I are going to be having a debate over the same topic I debated Gavin Herleman over on Richard Matson's channel. It's about the authorship of 1 Timothy. Specifically, it's about I'm bringing up the scholarly consensus that the pastoral epistles were not written by Paul, and just mentioning this has offended the hell out of Gavin, Jill, Praise et al. And so Gavin and I had that debate. Praise decided he wanted seconds, and so that's what tonight is. That's going to be 7 Eastern.
Praise I have Smoky Saint.
Praise I am that I am, the Popeye of Christian apologetics.
Yeah, you might just have Smoky Saint chomping at the bits here soon, because he seems to follow around and have the same enemies. So yeah, he might not like what you're saying there.
He came already.
He was doing a live stream that I jumped into, I think yesterday. He had Ryan the Presbyterian on there, and that guy's already called me a jackass because I commented something at him in a live chat, and it wasn't meant to be anything other than friendly. I just basically clarified something and came, "Don't be a jackass." I was like, "Whoa, pump the brakes there, pal." They were talking about something, and I made a comment in there. I said something about the Gospels established Jesus as a myth or something like that, and that did exactly what I thought it did. Smokey just started immediately calling me whatever noun, whatever noun. Yeah, it was the weirdest rat roach, atheist, clown. Yeah.
Actually, Sky Out had a new one last night. I thought it was absolutely genius. Ass Dick Toilet Clown.
Yeah. Ass Dick Toilet Clown.
I couldn't figure that one out. I'm quoting.
Jay, if you ever use the word Sky Out and genius in the same sentence again,
trigger.
So
Sky Out was here last night, a bit triggered with the late stream last night.
And Jefferson, you kind of gave me a perfect segue there. We're talking about Dr. Josh was your first guest. I think Nakatsuchi has something to tell us about Dr. Josh and whatever else he has coming up.
Well, yeah, I haven't really written out the schedule for the streams this week, and I want to reach out to CJ and see if maybe he's open for a Thursday night talk. But Wednesday night, I'm having Dr. Josh on, and we're going to be reviewing my debate on did the Bible condone what was the word? I can't think. Involuntary slavery. Yeah, I can't think. My mind is on the pharmacy because I got to run and get insulin before work. But and we're going to be reviewing that debate, as much of it as we can. Of course, time is going to be limited, and I also want to talk to him about the book of Job and when it was written, and if it was the first book of the Bible that was written, and hear what he has to say about it, being the scholar that he is. And then I'll be having a video coming out on that topic soon. I should be having a new Bible is stupid video coming out soon as well. So yeah, that's pretty much what I got going on.
Well, those always seem to trigger Smokey. So
yeah, well, and let me say for Smokey's benefit too. Now, when Knock has his discussion with Dr. Josh, if Dr. Josh points to this, that, and the other scholar, and let's Knock no, actually he's right. Job was the first book of the Bible that was ever written. Then guess what Knock will do? He'll admit he was wrong.
Sure will. Yeah.
Something that I've never ever heard you do, Smokey. I mean, I don't know if you're watching, but I'm
sure Smokey's never wrong. That's
he's definitely right about everything. So
Yeah, in a certain aspect of the word right. Yes, he is certainly right. He's certainly right about everything.
He is to the right about everything.
So anyway, Apostate Alliance. We're here every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. I'm sorry Faye wasn't here. Our viewership was probably down, by half because Faye wasn't here. People probably showed up and saw me and didn't see her and said, Stan. So you didn't get to see Faye, so I'll give you that shot of Faye. That's the aftermath of talking to Chris Shelton about Scientology.
I should send that to Geo Sam so we can see if we can clear it up and make it clearer.
Well, and not just clear, but I want to send him like the 5 seconds right around that look to make a GIF out of it.
I'm not sure if Geo can do that, but yeah, if somebody wants to help us make a GIF. But yeah, Geo, I might send you this image because Geo's really good. He could probably clean that image up and make it a lot crisper for us.
I don't know with the way her eyes are looking down, and you might want to find something different.
No, they're not looking down. Her eyes are bugged out and looking to the right. She's just incredible.
Down and to the right, but either way, okay.
Yeah.
Who was she reacting to there, or what was she reacting to?
Well, because Chris Shelton was on, and he's an ex-Scientologist, and he was telling her about Scientology, and there was just some particularly crazy facts that because Faye had never heard of. I think she had heard of Scientology, but she didn't hear about any of the particulars about it.
Yeah, you had me at Scientology because I read that one book from about going clear, and there were several chapters where I made the same. That my eyes did the same thing. Like, oh.
Well, and the thing that's great about it, if you go to the video, and that's what I'm talking about, I want to make a GIF, have somebody make a GIF out of that, is like the 3 seconds leading up to that look. She has like 4 or 5 facial expressions that come off her face. It's just like, and then the eyes bug out. It's just great. When I first screenshot that, we were on Twitter all day long. Everybody was, this is the look when this or that happens. I can't even remember how the stuff everybody was saying was like crazy. Like, yeah, this is how you look when you find out cheese is actually excrement, or whatever. All right. So
I think my eyes just did that. So yeah.
Coming up on the Apostate Alliance here, next week, the 13th, we're going to have on Jimmy Bangesh, Jimmy London, as he's known on Twitter. He's an ex-Muslim. We're going to have Cheyenne Ali on the 20th, ex-Muslim. We're going to have John Varghese from the CFIC, and I can't quite remember. I believe he is an ex-Christian. And then on the 4th of October, RCA will be in the house, Rational Canadian Atheist, and that's going to be a little bit of a different discussion because he is not an apostate. He is a lifelong non-believer. So we're going to throw that kind of conversation into the mix.
Yeah, RCA was supposed to be a part of that last conversation with Smokey on Will Kincaid's channel, and it was just such a clusterfuck of a conversation. I think Will forgot that he was going to bring RCA on. So yeah, it's kind of I was kind of disappointed RCA didn't get to come in for part of that.
And then also I forgot to mention that on the 17th, Thursday the 17th of September, we're going to have the 3rd episode of the Women of Atheism Roundtable, and Faye is going to be handling that. So far, the guests are Faye and her friend Saf. We're going to have a panel of atheist women that are all ex-Muslims, and that should be a good discussion with Faye, Saf, and hopefully a few other ladies she'll be reaching out to. So I want to thank Jefferson for being here. I want to thank Jay for popping in. I want to thank Nakasuchi for being here and holding up half of the conversation without Faye. So many times we have these interviews and they're people that Faye knows really well, so I let her handle the interview. I kind of liked it today because I got to handle an interview, I hardly ever get to do that. Not because they won't let me, but I just find it's easier when Faye knows somebody, just let them have a conversation. But I'm the one that knew Jeff, so it worked out perfect. And hopefully Faye will be back with us next week. Well, as a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure she will be back with us next week because she knows Jimmy pretty well. I want to thank everybody in the chat for coming by. As I said before, we're here every Sunday at 11 a.m. Let your friends know about it. We'd really like to grow this podcast and grow this channel. Please share the channel with people. And remember, when you come here on Sundays, the Apostate Alliance, this is where you can be free to not believe.